All right, shalom, shalom. Uh, the hopeful elect. Another think about it Thursday. Trying to be punctual, man. Said I was gonna get on 11, so we on at 11. Um, Hopefully it's not too long, but we're gonna let the Spirit lead us and guide us into all truth. Right? I'm Azrael of the hopeful elect, and I hope everybody that's watching is the hopeful elect as well. And I hope you guys are doing as Second Peter chapter 1 and verse 10 says, making your calling and election sure. But today we're going to talk about it. So I got the title up there, right? If you clicked on this video or joined this live, you know the title of this video is MOTB. What does MOTB mean? Mark of the Beast, right? It's not making a new name for it. It's just giving an abbreviation so I don't have to use all my characters in the title. But Mark of the Beast, what it takes to survive, right? Do you have what it takes to survive the mark of the beast? Think about it Thursday, right? There's been a lot of controversy these past few days, this week, past few weeks on the mark of the beast within the nation of Israel, right? Those that know who they are according to the Bible, according to God. This is not going to be a video that adds to that controversy. This is going to be an edifying video for all those that believe and can receive the scriptures of the Most High God, right? And the things that are written inside the book of truth and the book of the law. All right. So I'm not catering to anybody's doctrine, not catering to anybody's organization or camp, but we're going to take a deep dive in, briefly touch on the mark of the beast, and go into what it takes to survive. In the world, they say that this is what the basic instructions before leaving Earth, right? And in a sense, that's correct. In a sense, it does have instructions in here, right? And these instructions are going to tell you what it takes to survive the end days. Because when we think about the mark of the beast, we think about the end days. Now, before I get started, I want to give all glory, honor, and praise to the Most High God by the way of his Son, who is an instrument of salvation for the nation of Israel, right? And who was a prince and a savior for us, who's a horn of salvation, as it mentioned in Luke chapter 1, right? That was raised up for the nation of Israel. The world calls him Jesus Christ, right? The Messiah. With that being said, I'm going to get straight into the video. Hopefully this only takes about 30 minutes, right? I see the brother Denal is logging on. Shalom.
Brother just gonna add me. Don't even know if I'm ready yet.
Hey, you log on, you ready through the spirit. But Khan, so we're going to get straight into this video. Got a few precepts. Shouldn't take more than 30 minutes, right? Disclaimer, man. It's a lot, like I said earlier, it's a lot of controversy in the nation over the mark of the beast. We're not here to add to that controversy, right? We're here for edifying, right? The book tells us everything is lawful, right? But some things aren't expedient, right? Everything that comes out your mouth should be for the edifying of the church, not to belittle or degrade or denounce or talk down upon somebody's leader, somebody's elder, somebody's congregation, camp, or organization. We're not here to do that. We're here to edify the church. Everything that's coming out of our mouth is going to edify the church. All that other stuff is nonsense. I'm not going to throw shots at anybody, right? We're not going to make jokes about what's been said these past few days and make light of the situation, because it's not a situation to make light of, right? With that being said, here at the Hopeful Elect, we understand it is true that the mark of the beast is both physical and spiritual. It's both. You don't have to pick a side in every situation. The Bible, right, is double to that which is. You and we are all smart enough to know that you don't have to pick a side. Well, I believe it's spiritual. I believe it's physical. The Bible lets you know that it's both. But how is it both? We're gonna dive into that, right? If the brother could read this real quick.
The book of Second Corinthians, chapter 10, and verse number 3. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh.
Right. So even though every single day we were walking in the flesh, we might get hurt in the flesh. We might do things to our flesh. We might allow things to happen to our flesh. We do not war after the flesh. The struggle, the battle is not with our flesh, right? Even though we see the outcome in our flesh, in physical, in nature, right? In our mortal beings, we see the outcome, right? But ultimately, we do not war after the flesh. Now, go to the next precept to break this down even further. It's a classic. You should know where we're going with this, right? Ephesians 6, verse 11. Right, let's go to verse 12. Get to the point. If you could read this.
For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
So, yes, it is both. Even though you see things happen in the flesh, what's causing these things to happen in the flesh? It's spirits that's influencing the flesh. Everybody, hey, when you come into this truth, you understand that the Most High God sends lying spirits, tempting spirits, right? We know that Satan is the great tempter, right? There's spirits that influence the flesh. So before you see it with your eyes, before you see an invention, before you see something happen in science, before you see something happen with your eyes, it has happened in spiritual places, spiritual high places, and other principalities and other powers, right? You had something to say?
I was just gonna say something a little off topic. It's crazy. I just sent you a post on Instagram, I believe. I think I sent it to you of what's that man? Dang, I just forgot his name. But he was speaking and he mentioned this precept, and he was going into different people like P Diddy and uh Jay Z and stuff. It's cool. You can watch it after this, after we get off of this though. I forgot what that man's name is. Charleston White. Charleston White. He was talking about it.
Gotcha. Khan. So we might pull it up in a second too, if we got time. So James 1 and 14, if you could read this, please.
But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed.
Right. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. What is lust? Lust is, depending on what it is, in this context, lust is a sin, right? Because it's causing you to be tempted. When the Most High God allows those tempting spirits to come and tempt you, right? Your lust is what's going to allow you to be enticed in that. Because you love women, you're going to be enticed when the Most High God allows a tempting spirit of women to come to you. Because you love drugs, that spiritual temptation is going to inspire your lust to be enticed to act on it, right? You had something?
Yeah, I was gonna point out in the scripture too where it says when he is drawn away of his own lust, right? And so really, like the brother was going into, lust becomes a problem when you let it draw you away from your purpose, right? You can have lust all day, right? It becomes a sin when it draws you away from your purpose, right? Which is, as we know, Ecclesiastes 12 and 13. Fear God and keep His commandments. When it draws you away from that, that's when it becomes a sin, right? That's when it starts enticing you. That's when it becomes that temptation that's leading you to your destruction.
Khan. So we talking about the mark of the beast. We put this in context, right? Because everything that is written for our learning for the end days. But every man is tempted. There's going to be a lot of things that tempt you in these last days. Food when a famine hits, water or beverage when a famine hits, clothes on your back, a shelter. These things are going to tempt you when you lose them, right? Being able to buy and sell. You're going to be tempted to want to buy and sell because that's what you've been conditioned to do all your life, right? But that temptation is coming from what? Your own lust. There's certain things that you need and there's certain things that you want, and your own lust is going to entice you to make a decision based off that temptation. And that lust is a spiritual thing. How do we know that? Let's read the next verse.
Then when lust has conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death.
Right? So look, when lust hath conceived, does anybody know what conception is? Right? When you're giving birth, right? A lot of people give the birth date of a baby, but that's not when that baby was formed. When that baby was formed in the womb, that was conception, right? After you lay with a woman, right? It takes some time for that egg to be fertilized, and once that egg is fertilized, it's conceived, right? So when it said conceived here, it's talking about before the sin even was brought forth, before that baby even was brought forth, right? So look, then when lust, the lust that you had to survive, the lust that you had to eat because you were hungry, the lust that you had to buy and sell, right? That spiritual temptation, once that has built up in you and conceived in you, then you sin. How do you sin? Oh, you get that mark of the beast, whatever it may be. We'll know what the mark of the beast is. The Most High God will make it clear for us. If you're following the Most High God, it's going to be no question, no debate when it's here, right? But that lust in a lot of our people that are blind is going to have them conceive fear. And when that temptation, that spiritual temptation comes, it's going to lead them to act in their flesh to bring forth sin. Sin is the action. Sin is the act of transgressing the law. When you get the mark of the beast, that is a sin because you're not supposed to, right? So now we see how that spiritual buildup adds and brings forth sin. And that's in everything in life. Everything in life, even people in the world know if you want to be a millionaire, you got to think it first, right? You got to meditate on it. Everybody knows that something spiritual brings about something physical, right? Same thing with giving birth, like we're going over here. You like a woman, spiritually y'all connected, then that caused you to act, and now you brought forth life, all from spiritual things. When it is finished, bringeth forth death, it says, right? So once your temptation builds, that spiritual temptation conceives fear. That fear causes you to take the mark of the beast, which is a sin. And then that sin causes you, now that you have the mark of the beast, now you have death. So that's why we believe, guess what? It's both. It's spiritual and physical. You don't have to play defense, right? And we're finna go into, in just a second, how we should prepare for the mark of the beast, right? Slovakia. Hope I'm articulating this as best as possible. Like I said, we want all things to be for the edifying of the church, not for the arguing or the debating of the church, but we actually want people to learn and understand the scriptures without picking a side, right? Understand what you're reading. If you could read this for me, please.
Isaiah 33:6. And wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, and strength of thy salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure.
Right. So everything in this book is written for us to survive the end times, the latter days, the days to come, the day of the Lord. Right? Wisdom and knowledge. What is that wisdom and knowledge? He gave us these laws, statutes, and commandments in the book of Deuteronomy and said, what? This is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, right? So these laws, statutes, and commandments are going to keep us stable in those times. So keep the law, statutes, and commandments. It's going to tell you how to maneuver in life when things get hard, so you don't take the mark of the beast, right? And that's key to preparation. In a broad sense, keep the law, statutes, and commandments. But we're going to go into what actually in the law, statutes, and commandments will help you prepare for that time. We always bring this out. Your wisdom and knowledge are these laws, right? These laws are spiritual and physical. You're not going to know, hey, I can't eat pork, right? Unless you read the law. You're not going to know, hey, I can't mark my body or print anything upon it unless you know the law. You're not going to know, hey, I can't have this certain job because it prevents me from keeping the Sabbath, right? Unless you read the law. You have to get wisdom and knowledge so you will be stable and you don't make the wrong decision, right, when it comes to crunch time. Let's go to Romans 15:4, right? Another staple. There's nothing to be afraid of, right? I read something in Psalms the other day that told us all those that follow him in his word, right, will be kept in the day of temptation, in the day of horror, right? Could you read this for me, Baba Kasha?
For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
Might have what?
Might have hope.
Right. So these scriptures give us comfort, right? This kind of reminds us of thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Even though a lot of this stuff in this law is chastising and is stopping us from doing what our flesh wants to do, it's causing us to learn restraint, right? It's comforting. Why? Because we know if we do these things, we see over and over and over again through testimonies that he always saves. And that's our hope. That's our comfort in reading the things written aforetime, right? I'm going to go to Romans 5:5 real quick. And this helps us prepare for the mark of the beast. Reading those things that happen aforetime, right? And we're going to get some examples as well. Can you read this?
And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us.
Right? So everybody needs hope, right? Without hope, man, you have no faith. Without hope, there's no reason to try. Without hope, you've already given up. Everybody needs hope. And where we get this hope from, like we just read in Romans 15:4, from the scriptures. If you're not reading, the book of Deuteronomy 17 says a king reads in this book of the law every day of his life. If you're not reading, you don't have no hope. I know if you're not reading, I know, brother, I know, sister, that you are not going to make it. You're going to crumble because you have no knowledge of any testimonies. You have no wisdom and knowledge to keep you stable, right? You're going off of your own opinion, your own thoughts. But it is these scriptures that are going to get us through these last days, right? If you could read this for me.
Kind man. It's just like when you're in school, just like when you're in school, man, and you got an exam over a novel or something, right? And you didn't read that novel at all, right? And that exam's put in front of your face, bro. Hey, look, you're not gonna be able to withstand, right, the questions of that exam, man, because they're all gonna be concerning that novel that you know nothing about because you didn't take the time to read.
Right.
This
We've all experienced that.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 119 and 111. Thy testimonies have I taken as an heritage forever, for they are the rejoicing of my heart.
Right. So the testimonies, man, we take them as a heritage. The things we read about aforetime, all the stories, all the times we were saved, right? We're coming up on a new year and coming up on another holy day season, right? Passover's coming, New Year's coming, right? We remember these things in the law. We don't just rehearse these things just to have a good time and get drunk. We remember these things to hold our testimonies as a heritage, right? The Passover became our heritage. Purim became our heritage. Dedication became our heritage, right? All these things became our heritage because the Most High God performed that act of power in the earth to remind us of his strength, to remind us of his saving power. And that's what's called the testimony. Thy testimonies have I taken as a heritage, right? I want you to read this one real quick. And I know a lot of you might be thinking, well, how is a heritage going to save me from the mark of the beast? Salakia, right? You can read this. You don't have to read that first part.
My Psalms 119 and 81. My soul fainteth for salvation, but I hope in thy word.
Right. My soul fainteth for salvation. We want salvation, but where's our hope? In the word. We got to read to get that hope. Just like you shooting shots in the gym, for you to have faith that the shot's going to go in game time, you had to be studying. You had to be practicing. Our hope lies in the word. That's where we get our faith from. When our heart and our soul fainted because we don't see salvation, is we can't possibly see it's near because of all the pain and suffering that we're going through and oppression, we lie in hope. That's what makes us look crazy to these other nations, right? Salakia, bear with me real quick. Right, so I'm gonna go through a few times in the scriptures, all right, that kind of simulate the mark of the beast. Because we just read that we get our hope and our stability, our wisdom, our knowledge, our faith, right, from the testimonies, from things that happen aforetime, right? So let's go into the book of the law and see how we can make it through, because our forefathers made it through, right? You could read this.
That at what time ye heard the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up.
Right? So this is back in Babylon. It was a time where, hey, look, if you didn't bow down, if you didn't worship the image that Nebuchadnezzar set up, you wasn't living no more, right? Forget buying and selling, you wasn't living no more, right? When we read about the mark of the beast, we talk about the name, we talk about the number, we talk about the image, right? This golden image, if you didn't bow down, guess what? You was no more, you was dead. But guess what? Daniel got through it. The Most High God saw Daniel through it, and the 3 Hebrew boys, right? Even though they was thrown into the lion's den, the fiery furnace, right? This was a mark of the beast in their day and time, in ancient Babylon, right? Read this next verse.
Daniel 3 and 6. And whoso falleth not down and worship shall the same hour be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace.
Right, look. We talking about buying or selling now. They was just cast into that fiery furnace, right? They didn't want to take it. They was cast into that fiery furnace. And we saw what they did, how Daniel still didn't bow down, how the 3 Hebrew boys still didn't bow down and pray to another image, right? Whether you believe it's in word and deed, or if you think it's physically doing something, we just cannot sin. Keep the law, statutes, and commandments, and you will not take the mark of the beast. And guess what? The Most High God's going to save you through it. How do you think Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys knew not to do this? Because they were studied in the law, right? They understood the law and the testimonies. 1 second. The Apocrypha is on here, ain't it? Let me go to this one first. So just like them, we have to be studied in the law and the testimonies, so that way we don't bow down either and take the image or take the mark, right? And best believe the Most High God was influencing Nebuchadnezzar, right, to do that. The Most High God influenced Pharaoh to do the things that he was doing spiritually. And the things that happened, right, were influenced by a spirit before they became a reality, right? Let's go to Esther. We know Purim is coming up, right? I encourage all those that have not read the book of Esther to read the book of Esther, right? Book of Esther, chapter 3 and verse 2.
And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence.
Right. Mordecai didn't bow because he knew that in the Big Ten, the Ten Commandments, at the top of that, it say what? Don't bow before any other God. If he would have bowed before Haman, he would have been making Haman a god, right? I want you to read the next verse.
Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment?
Right. Because guess what? When you don't take the mark of the beast, when you don't get down with the societal norm or with a wicked king's commandment, you transgress the king. And there's punishment for that. Mordecai was ready to take it to the chin because he had hope and faith in the comfort of the scriptures that he's read. He read about David. He read about Samson. He read about Gideon. He read about all the times that the Most High God intervened. He read about Moses, and he was able to stand firm, right? 1 second. I want you to read verse 8. We're going through these just to let you guys know it's nothing new under the sun. There were times where we had to make a decision, right? There were times where we had to sacrifice pleasure, right, to not get down with society, right? Whether that's taking something, whether that's doing something, it's nothing new. And we get our hope and we get our wisdom and our preparation by reading. If we don't read, you won't be prepared. You can read all the articles you want. You can look at all the conspiracies you want, but unless you read this Bible, you won't be prepared. Right? If you could read this one.
And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws, therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them.
Right. So look, we call ourselves the hopeful elect, right? And we hope that all those who watch this are a part of the hopeful elect as well. And we hope that you're making your calling and election sure by keeping these laws. There should be hey, look, I read a precept the other day. A brother brought it out on Twitter, paraphrasing, right? The law is easy and not grievous to the righteous, but to the sinner they cannot comprehend. There's going to be a clear-cut difference between who's following the Most High God and who's not, right? It won't be a controversy of oh, I gotta be on my P's and Q's. I don't want to take the mark of the beast. You know why? Because if you're following these laws, statutes, commandments, you're not going to. Here we see Haman accusing God's chosen people, saying what? Their laws are diverse from all the people. There is a difference. If you're following the Most High God in this truth, you're going to be different, diverse from all the rest of the people of the earth, right? Neither keep they the king's laws. You're not going to keep the societal norms. You're not going to keep the laws of Babylon, mystery Babylon. You're not going to keep those things. You're not going to do those things. Therefore, guess what? You're not going to end up taking the mark of the beast. In this situation, they're not going to bow before a man. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. Mark of the beast wise, therefore, it's not the president, it's not the UN, it's not the society's profit to allow them to keep functioning. We got to take away buying and selling from them. There's nothing new under the sun. This stuff has happened to our forefathers and our foremothers, and they got through it by keeping God's commandments. As we read earlier in Psalms, my soul fainteth for salvation, but my hope is in the word. Even though I don't see salvation, I can't see it. I don't see how this is possible to happen. The stuff that I read him do, I believe it, and it gives me hope. Some people read it and they think it's a fairy tale. They don't have hope in it. Some people read it, and some people don't read it, and they don't even know that they have hope. You go to some of these countries where it's just so bad, and they don't have hope because they don't read. They're not stable. They don't have any wisdom and knowledge, right? As Isaiah said in chapter 33. How do I get to the Apocrypha? Oh, I see it. Right. Let's go to 2nd Maccabees. Let's get one more example, right? In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. So let's get 3. Let's go to chapter 6. Start at verse 6. Right? You could read this.
Yeah. Second Maccabees 6:6. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days or ancient fasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew.
Khan. So, and shalom to the brothers on the feed. But Khan, right? We read in here in Maccabees, right, with Judas and his army. Judas made a wonderful speech and said, hey, look, all those that want to keep God's laws, statutes, and commandments, right, follow me. And they went into the wilderness. They went away from society. They were no longer allowed to buy or sell or keep the Sabbath day or their ancient feast, which we read was a heritage, or to profess themselves at all to be a Jew. They had to be a part of that united nation. They had to be a part of Greece. They had to be a part of society, right? They had to get down with the mark of the beast, right? In our aspect, what's coming to us is the mark of the beast. But we have instances like this to read, so that way we fall into that temptation. We're like Judas and the people that follow Judas. We're saying, guess what? We'll suffer for that. We'll suffer for a righteous cause. Blessed are they that are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Matthew 5 and 10. Right? I want you to read verse 8.
And in the day of the kings, moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices.
You should take the mark of the beast, the image, the name, the number. You should take it. It says suggestion by Ptolemy, but you think he was suggesting it? No, he was commanding it. This world is going to command things of us to take certain things, to do certain things. And if we fall into that, guess what? We're going off. So that's why the book of James was saying, because of your lust, it'll cause you to conceive something that's going to bring forth sin, right? So here we see the mark of the beast being what? Both spiritual and physical. Because of your lust to operate in society, it conceived spiritually fear, and spiritually you gave into temptation, and that spiritual conception brought forth sin.
And so the mark in this instance, man, would just simply be would simply just be you claiming that you're an Israelite, you claiming that you're a Jew, right? And you getting persecuted for that. You know what I'm saying?
Come on, read this next verse.
And whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery.
Right. So, like the brother said, who would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles? Who's ever not getting the mark of the beast? Whoever not getting down with the image? Who's ever not getting down with the name? You don't want to call yourself United Nations? You don't want to be a part of this society and call yourself an American or whatever it's gonna be at that time, right? Modern day Babylonian. You don't want to get down with the mark,
With the one world religion,
with the one world. You don't want to be a part of the. You still want to be a Christian. You still want to be an Israelite. You don't want to get down with that. Guess what? You should be put to death. How they're gonna put you to death? By causing you to be in famine, by causing you to be in poverty, by making sure you can't buy or sell anything so you can't survive, right? Then might a man have seen the present misery. We're all going to see that temptation. But how are you going to act, right? We just gave 3 examples, right? Judas Maccabees, Esther and Mordecai, Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys. They all got presented with a certain their own mark, and they all refused the mark, right? Because they were built up spiritually first, and that being built up spiritually gave them hope, and they did not transgress against God's law, which caused them not to take a mark, not to do a mark, not to receive a mark, right? So all the controversy of is it spiritual, is it physical, should we look, just read the scriptures and look at how you can escape from taking the mark of the beast through the scriptures, right? And that's by keeping these law, statutes, and commandments. It's not by doing anything other than that. These brothers and these sisters in the Bible were able to get salvation, right? By doing God's law and reading God's law and reading the testimonies. If you don't do that, you're not going to be stable, right? But that's all I had to say on that. If the brother got anything, did you want to play that Charleston White video?
nah, it really doesn't have anything to do with this lesson per se.
Um,
He was going into a different direction, but if you could just pull up a precept for me, man, I just got one quick example as well. It's in First Maccabees 1, chapter 1, and starting at verse 60. I was gonna go to the mighty man Eleazar and how he denied the pork, but that's a long story, man. But that's an extra credit for anybody that wants to, read a little bit more into this topic. Go read about Eleazar, man, and how he, in his old age, denied eating that pork.
right.
Um,
Even the
you,
7 sons,
you know what I'm saying? Then the seven sons too. Y'all go read those stories, man. Those are very nice stories to read concerning this topic of the mark of the beast, man,
uh,
and standing for what you believe in, right? And so I just want to read First Maccabees 1 and 60, and then verse 61 as well, if you can read it, or unless you want me to read it and you break it down.
it says, at which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised.
Right? And so at this time, they were telling you, hey, look, it's really kind of crazy because the mark in this sense is not being marked, right? If that makes sense, if you can follow me. So if you were found, if your baby was found circumcised, right, you were getting persecuted for that. And again, that goes back to the law, right? It goes back to the law of being circumcised, and consecrated to the Most High, right? And so that goes back to the law. But if you didn't do, if you wanted to save your life, you want to save your kid's life, you wouldn't circumcise your kids, right? And that would be similar to taking the mark of the beast, right? Read this next verse.
First Maccabees 1 and 61. And they hanged the infants about their necks and rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them.
right? So they were hanging their infants, their babies around these women's necks if they caught them circumcised, right? They either said, hey, look, either you don't circumcise, or if you do, we gonna kill your baby, bro, right? And then it's either do or die, right? That was the mark back then. And so you can see throughout, stories in the Bibles, throughout the examples that the brother brought out, there's nothing new under the sun. There's going to be a time where your faith is put into question. There's going to be a time where that temptation is brought to you, and you have, a choice, right? The Most High said, I have set before you life and death. Therefore, choose life, right? And that life is what? These laws, statutes, and commandments. But with that, I yield.
If you could read this.
The book of Ezekiel, chapter 9, and verse 4. And the Lord said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof.
Right. So I'm reading this because, right, there's a righteous balance. Everything is a balance. The Most High God hates a false balance. So if there's a mark on the left hand side, there's going to be a mark on the right hand side. If evil has a mark, righteousness is going to have a mark. But what I'm going into is to show that the mark can be spiritual or physical, right? But a spiritual mark is going to bring forth action. And even an evil mark, an evil spiritual mark is going to bring forth sin, transgression of the law, right? Here we see the mark being spiritual. They weren't really getting a mark on their foreheads. It was an angel going and marking those people that were keeping the law, statutes, and commandments and were sighing and crying because of oppression, right? But let's go to Leviticus, because if we read the law, it's going to save us from a spiritual mark and a physical mark, right? Just keep the commandments. You're not going to do either, right? I think this is what Leviticus 19 and 28, right? All we got to do is not argue, not debate. It's just be edified and understand the scriptures, right? And you're never going to fail. Look, an elder might fail you. A camp or congregational organization, it might fail you. Man might fail you, but these scriptures will never fail, right? Read this.
Leviticus 19 and 28, ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord.
So we're not supposed to be taking any physical marks either. So if you have this in mind, you'll understand, look, even if the mark is physical,
It's still part of the law.
it's still a sin.
Right. So people have that argument of the RFID chip, right? Either way you look at it, you should be going against it. Even when the jab came out, right? People started saying, "Is this the mark of the beast?" Right? It didn't matter if it was the mark of the beast or not. It says, "Don't make any cuttings in your flesh, nor print any marks upon you, bruh." Right? So we shouldn't be doing that type of stuff in the first place. RFID chip, hey, look, whether you believe it's the mark of the beast or not, you shouldn't be taking it.
Right. We keep these scriptures, it's going to keep us from every false way, right? It shouldn't be no argument. Oh, the brother think it's the market. He think it's the RFID chip. Oh, he's so immature. He don't know the scriptures. Oh, he thinks it's spiritual. He gone. He not gonna make it. He gonna end up taking it when he suffer. No, just keep these laws, statutes, and commandments.
And
Read
you'll be fine.
testimonies, and guess what? You're not gonna do either. You're not gonna bow down to a society, and you're not going to receive anything that's going to mark up your flesh.
Right. You ain't even got to be on the lookout for nothing, bro. If you're keeping these law, statutes, and commandments, you ain't got to worry about nothing, bro. Just keep living your life according to those law, statutes, and commandments. And before you know it, the mark of the beast, whatever it is, done showed up and went by you, and you just kept living your life. Whether you get persecuted or not, you just know you're living by the straight and narrow. That's all you got to worry about.
That's all you gotta work. That's what's gonna keep you stable in these end times. But with that, man, I'm gonna say shalom. I yield. You have anything else? Khan. Giving all glory and honor to the Most High God by the way of His Son, who's an instrument of salvation for the nation, who put truth in our tongue to be able to give this edifying message. Um, Gave y'all something to think about on Think About It Thursday. Uh, you guys prepare yourselves for the mark of the beast and prepare yourselves, Lord willing, for the new year and Passover coming up. We do have a calendar and we will be dropping it on our Instagram page. And I believe we are printing copies. So stay tuned for that. Um, keep these feast days, right? But other than that, Shalom.